Once upon a time, in the remote village of Nyambe, nestled deep within the forested hills, lived a family burdened by desperation and poverty. Kwaku and Abena had 3 children, Kofi, Ama, and Ya. Kwaku and Abena were among the poorest of its inhabitants. They worked tirelessly on their meager farm, but the land was unforgiving, and the yield was barely enough to feed them. But they had hope, because their eldest son, Kofi, was a bright and promising student. He excelled in school, consistently bringing home top grades, and was often seen as the village's future leader, and had dreams of becoming a doctor. Ama, their middle child, who, though not as gifted academically as her brother, possessed remarkable talents that made her stand out in other ways. She spoke well and also had dreams of being a journalist. But their youngest daughter, Ya was a strikingly beautiful young woman, her beauty often turning heads wherever she went. Her smooth, dark skin glowed with a natural radiance, and her large, expressive eyes held a depth of sadness that only added to her allure. Her body was curvaceous, with a well-defined waist that accentuated her shapely hips, and a figure that many envied. From a young age, Ya had struggled in school. She couldn't grasp the numbers and letters that other children seemed to pick up so easily. When she came home with poor grades, her parents were quick to scold her, telling her that she was wasting their hard-earned money. Kwaku and Abena became increasingly disappointed with Ya's lack of academic progress. They lavished praise on Kofi and Ama, while Ya received only stern looks and harsh words. As the seasons passed, Ya's sense of isolation grew. She watched as her parents proudly displayed Kofi's report cards. Ya yearned for the same love and approval that her siblings received, but all she saw in her parents' eyes was disappointment. Since education had always been seen as a luxury, and with Ya's apparent lack of aptitude, they began to see it as a pointless expense. They withdrew her from school, deciding that their money would be better spent on Kofi and Ama. Ya's hands were raw from scrubbing the laundry, her fingers pruned from hours of soaking in soapy water. She could hear her siblings, Kofi and Ama, laughing inside the house, their voices carefree and full of joy. "Ya, hurry up with those clothes! We're waiting for you to sweep the yard!" Ama called out, a teasing lilt in her voice. She sat comfortably on a stool, practicing her speech and vocabulary, while Kofi lounged nearby with a book in hand. "Maybe if you were as smart as us, you wouldn't have to do all this work," Kofi added with a smirk, flipping a page in his book without looking up. "But I guess someone has to do it, right?" Ya bit her lip, holding back tears as she continued scrubbing. Inside, her parents praised Kofi and Ama, their voices full of pride. But for Ya, there were no kind words, only more chores to be done. "Ya, when you're done there, go fetch water from the tap," her mother called from inside. "And make sure you sweep the kitchen too. Kofi and Ama need to focus on their studies." Ya nodded silently, her heart heavy with the unfairness of it all. She couldn't help but wonder why her parents couldn't see how hard she tried, even if she wasn't as smart as her brother and sister. But instead of complaining, she simply wiped her tears and continued her work, hoping that one day, things might be different. Kwaku and Abena had exhausted every means to survive. They had sold their livestock, bartered their belongings, and borrowed money from neighbors who themselves had little to give. The pressure was mounting as their debts piled up, and the prospect of starvation loomed ever closer. Desperation led them to make a choice that would haunt them for the rest of their lives. They decided to give Ya out to men for money, since she was off no use in the house. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the mountains and the village was cloaked in shadows, a man known as Mr. Agye arrived at their doorstep. He was a wealthy, older man from a neighboring town, infamous for preying on vulnerable families. Mr. Agye had heard whispers of Kwaku and Abena's dire situation and knew that they were easy targets. After a brief, hushed conversation with Kwaku, Mr. Agye, with a leering smile that made Ya's skin crawl, left a small bag of money on the table. The sum was more than Kwaku had ever held in his life. With trembling hands, he accepted it, knowing full well the cost. That night, Ya was sent to Mr. Age's home under the guise of helping with household chores. But the truth was far more sinister. Ya's innocence was stolen, and every night thereafter, she was forced to visit different men in exchange for money. Each time, Kwaku and Abena turned a blind eye, justifying their actions by the food it put on their table and the roof it kept over their heads. Ya, once a lively and joyful girl, even though maltreated, now moved like a ghost through the village. Her eyes, once bright with hope, were hollow and vacant. She had lost her spirit, her dreams shattered by the cruel reality forced upon her. The villagers, aware of what was happening, either pitied the family or turned away, unwilling to intervene. One Saturday afternoon, a group of counselors and health workers visited the village to talk about abuse and how to prevent it. When Ya heard about it, she felt a glimmer of hope, thinking that her suffering might finally come to an end. She believed this could be her chance to escape the cycle of abuse. Eagerly, she dressed up and went to the building where they were holding the sessions. However, her hopes were shattered when a male health worker, noticing her beauty and curvy figure, took advantage of her. This time, it felt like the world was truly collapsing around her. He warned her to stay quiet and not to tell anyone. Devastated, Ya ran out of the building and hurried back home. What she had hoped would be her salvation had turned into yet another nightmare. "Why is this happening to me, God? Please, I'm begging you, I have no one to help me. Please send someone who can save me from this suffering," she prayed silently, tears streaming down her face. Exhausted and broken, she collapsed onto her bed and cried herself to sleep. By this point, all hope was gone. The money her parents earned by exploiting her was used to send her siblings to the city for further education, while Ya was left alone in the village, with no one to help her or offer any emotional support. But one night, everything changed. A stranger arrived in Nyambe, a woman named Miss Chisholm. She was a teacher from a distant city who had come to the village to offer her services at the local school. Since she had been withdrawn from school, she would often find herself hiding at the back of the school building. She would press her ear against the wall to catch fragments of the lessons being taught inside. Each day she returned, clinging to the hope that she could still learn something, even if she wasn't officially in class. One day, as she huddled behind the crates, her teacher, Miss Chisholm, happened to glance out of the window during a break. She noticed a familiar face peeking through the foliage. Curious, she decided to investigate further. He stepped outside and approached the area where she was hiding. Gently, she called out, "Hey, what are you doing here? Why are you not in class with your mates?" Startled, Ya emerged from her hiding spot, her face streaked with dirt and her clothes tattered from exposure. She looked up at her with wide, frightened eyes. I just wanted to listen to the lessons," she stammered. "I miss school. I want to learn." Miss Chisholm was drawn to Ya's plight almost immediately. She noticed the bruises on her arms, the haunted look in her eyes, and the way she flinched whenever a man came near her. Determined to uncover the truth, Miss Chisholm began asking questions, probing into the dark secrets that the village had tried so hard to keep hidden. It wasn't long before Miss Chisholm learned of the horrors that Ya endured. Furious and heartbroken, she confronted Kwaku and Abena. "How could you do this to your own child?" she demanded, her voice trembling with anger. Leaky said proudly, "Madam Teacher, or whoever you call yourself, you can't tell us what to do. What were you expecting us to do with such a burden? She's of no use, so we had to put her to use. You better start going because you can't come and tell us what to do in our own house." Chisholm looked so disgusted by just looking at their face, said, "There is always another way," she said firmly. "Selling your daughter's innocence is not the answer. You should have done better as a parent." But they chased Miss Chisholm out of their house. Without hesitation, Amma took Ya into her home, offering her a safe haven from the horrors she had endured. She reported the situation to the local authorities, and with her help, a raid was conducted on the homes of the men who had exploited Ya. The perpetrators, including the first man who had taken her, were arrested and brought to justice. But Chisholm's work was far from over. She knew that Ya's scars ran deep, and it would take more than just removing her from the situation to heal her. Amma spent countless hours with Ya, talking to her, comforting her, and slowly helping her rebuild her shattered self-esteem. One day, as Amma was organizing the school's supplies, she noticed Ya sitting alone in a corner, drawing in the dirt with a stick. Amma watched as the girl's hand moved with surprising skill, creating intricate patterns and shapes. It was clear that Ya had a natural talent for art, one that had been overlooked in the shadow of her suffering. Amma encouraged Ya to continue drawing, and over time, she provided her with proper materials, pencils, paper, and paints.
Ya poured all of her pain, her anger, and her fear into her artwork. It became her refuge, a way to express the emotions she couldn't put into words. As the months passed, Ya's art began to attract attention. Chisholm, seeing the potential in her work, reached out to contacts in the city, and soon, Ya's drawings were being displayed in local galleries. Her unique style, born from a place of deep emotion, resonated with many, and her work quickly gained popularity. Ya, once a girl who had been discarded and abused, was now being celebrated for her talent. She became a symbol of resilience and strength, a testament to the fact that even in the darkest of circumstances, beauty could still emerge. Back home, Kwaku and Abena, now shunned by the village and facing the consequences of their actions, watched in stunned silence as their daughter's life transformed. Their two other children, Kofi and Amma, abandoned them. They moved to the city. They became the doctor and journalist they wanted to be, but they were caught up with their own families to take care of, and had no time to come visit their parents back in the village. They were no longer the proud, defiant parents. Instead, they were broken, humbled by the knowledge that they had nearly destroyed the very thing that would bring their daughter success. Years later, Ya's name was known far beyond the borders of Nyambe. Her art had been featured in international exhibitions, and she had become a prominent figure in the art world. But despite her fame, Ya never forgot where she came from, or the pain that had shaped her. One day, she returned to Nyambe, not as the broken girl who had left, but as a strong, confident woman. She visited her parents, who had grown old and frail, and forgave them, though the wounds they had inflicted would never fully heal. Ya's journey was not just one of survival, but of transformation. She had taken the suffering inflicted upon her and turned it into something beautiful, something powerful. And in doing so, she had not only reclaimed her own life, but had also become a beacon of hope for others who had endured similar pain.